Laestadians believe in the succession of the believer, which means that the living faith has been passed from apostles to this day through an unbroken chain of believers, where every person in the chain has had the Holy Spirit in them, and then they have preached the gospel to the next person in the chain, and they have preached to the next person, and so on. And so the living faith has been passed all the way to our time. And they also believe that you cannot be saved by reading the Bible. So you can only be saved through listening to the preaching of the gospel from a believer who already have the Holy Spirit in them, the justifying presence of the Holy Spirit. And also these exclusive Laestadian branches claim that they are the only way to heaven. So if you want to go to heaven, you must go through their group and listen to their preaching. And now there comes a problem for them, because they also say that nobody who believes differently than them can be saved. So for example, in SRK here in Finland, I have heard many times it said that we believe like all the Christians all through the history have believed, always. And they don't accept anybody in communion with them if they don't believe exactly the same as they. And there comes a problem for them when you look at the church history. For example, the first 500 years of the early church, nobody ever believed like Laestadians there. So they had all sorts of different beliefs. For example, there is nobody in the first 500 years who didn't believe in baptismal regeneration. So even the heretic groups really believed in baptismal regeneration. And this means that nobody ever believed about baptism like Laestadians do for the first 500 years. Yeah, and so anyway, Laestadians anyway tend to take someone there from the church history and quote, for example, cherry pick from Saint Cyprian or Saint Augustine something, and pretend that they were true believers according to them, and that they believed as Laestadians do. And that's of course a lie. You know, you don't have to Google more than 1 minute to know that. Then when we come a little bit closer through the church history, so when we come to the Luther, we know that Luther believed also in baptismal regeneration. He also believed that one can receive forgiveness of sins through sacraments in general. So Luther had all sorts of different beliefs also than what Laestadians. Then if we go even closer to this day, we take the Moravians, because here in Finland it is generally agreed in pretty much all the Laestadian branches I know that the Moravians were the forerunners of the Readers' Movement, and the Readers' Movement was the one that converted Laestadius the priest. So if we look at the Moravians, the father of the Moravian movement, the Count Zinzendorf, he was a very ecumenical person. He is even called an ecumenical pioneer when you do a little bit of Googling. So he wanted to work in many denominations. He thought that there are believers in many of them, and he also had a shared communion, the Lord's Supper, with people from different denominations. And yeah, as I said, the Moravians are believed to be the forerunners of the Readers' Movement. So when we come to the Readers' Movement, it is believed that the Moravians brought the living faith to the Scandinavia, And then it became readers' movement here in Scandinavia. And the readers' movement converted Laestadius, and it converted Laestadius so that the so-called Mary of the Lapland went to the Lutheran priest who belonged to the New Readers movement, which was one of the main branches of the Readers movement. In Scandinavia, there was the Old Readers movement and the New Readers movement. And pretty much every Bible study group was called Readers so there could be many Readers movement, but those were the main branches. And the Per Brandl, who converted the Mary of the Lapland, he was also very ecumenical. So, for example, he was friend of Anders Rosenius, who was the father of Karl Olof Rosenius, who the Karl Olof was the father of the Rosenian revival movement in the southern Sweden. And Brandl had fundamental impact on Karl Olof's religious breakthrough. Then, if you look at other things from Brandl's life, when he had some kind of sickness and he went to get treatment to Stockholm, he went to Stockholm and he stayed with Methodist missionary pastor and preacher George Scott, and he actually preached in the consecration of the church where George Scott preached, and he also preached with George Scott there during the time when he was in Stockholm. So, Readers' movement, at least the Per Brandl, they were not exclusivists either. Now, when we go to Laestadius, the priest himself, we find out that first of all, he wasn't an exclusivist. So he believed that there are true believers outside his own group. So I will make a separate video about this, because I will show in that video that it is true that Laestadius wasn't an exclusivist and that he believed that there are indeed salvation outside his own group and outside his own revival. That is clear when we look at his writings. He also believed in the third use of the law, which is a Lutheran doctrine. And this is a doctrine that has caused even division in Laestadianism. So there was this movement, Uusheräys, the New Awakening in English, that was in the early 1900s and in the end of 1800s. So now that we think about this, there is a dilemma for all those exclusive Laestadian branches here, because according to your own theology, if someone believes differently than you do, they cannot be saved. And we know that in the church history, nobody believed like you, not even the Laestadius himself, who you believe, who passed you the living faith. So my question is, who is right here, you or Laestadius? Because, and this is a dilemma for you really, if Laestadius was right, then you cannot have the Holy Spirit, because you have strayed from Laestadius' teachings on very big issues like the doctrine of the church. You are exclusivists, Laestadius was not, and you will not accept as saved anybody these days who is not an exclusivist. And that's one example only. And so, if he was right, you cannot have the Holy Spirit because you strayed from his teachings. And then the other thing is, if he was wrong, you can still not have the Holy Spirit because you believe differently than he does. And that means, when we look at that with your theology, that Laestadius did not have the Holy Spirit nor the living faith, because he believed so differently than you. And that means that therefore he did not pass the Holy Spirit nor the living faith to you. And that means that you cannot have the Holy Spirit. So if you are honest, really, you can see this great problem here, the great lie the devil has fed to the Laestadians after Laestadius. And I truly think that you stop, I truly hope that you stop and you think about this, and that you seriously think about your salvation. Is it well with your soul if you have been believing this lie up until this point? I strongly encourage you to seek God really and pray like never before and ask him to reveal himself to you, because it is highly possible that you don't know him, that you don't know God, and you don't have living faith, because you have been deceived all your life and about this thing. And I want you to be saved really. In the next two videos I will show beyond the shadow of doubt that Laestadius did not believe in the exclusivism of his own group. He did not believe that there is no salvation outside his group. And the other thing I will show, I will do two videos. The other thing I will show is that he did believe in the third use of the law, which is damnable heresy according to SRK today. And they will not think that you are saved if you believe that.